welcome. I am Thomas Porteus and you're watching The World Report. Let's take a look at some of the headlines this hour. Wildfires ravage Los Angeles, killing 5 and causing over $50 billion worth of damage. President Biden cancels his Italy trip to address the escalating crisis. Israeli hostage found dead and tensions rise with 3 IDF soldiers killed. Hamas reports 51 Palestinians dead in the past 24 hours. A Russian missile strike on Ukraine's Zaporizhia region claims 13 lives. Civilians and infrastructure bear the brunt of escalating hostilities. Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro set to be sworn in as protests erupt. French President Macron signals support for the opposition movement. Israeli forces have recovered the body of Yousef Zyadna, 53, a Arab hostage taken by Hamas in Gaza. His son Hamza remains unaccounted for, raising serious concerns over his fate. The Zyadna family received this tragic news as US-led efforts for a new ceasefire and hostage release deal are close to success. Meanwhile, 3 Israeli soldiers died and 3 others were wounded in intense clashes in the northern Gaza Strip. The casualties include Staff Sergeants Matyahu Yakarov, Panel Kanu, Kaza and Nevo Fisher, all serving with 101st Armoured Brigade. In Gaza, health officials report 51 more Palestinian deaths, bringing the overall death toll to nearly 46,000 since the start of the conflict. As we dive into this, we're going to first speak to our reporter Aditya Wadwan. Aditya, what are the most recent updates from Gaza?
Well, as you mentioned, Tom, the body of an Israeli hostage has been recovered. That was, earlier in Hamas captivity. Now, all these things are coming up when the ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel is likely to happen. But at the same time, what is happening is that there have been blame game from both the sides. Israeli defense forces are continuing to attack the Hamas hideouts in and around Gaza Strip and North Gaza and Central Gaza. And on the other side, Hamas is claiming that Israel is not accepting the conditions as laid down, as per which the ceasefire process is to move forward. Recently what we have seen that President Donald Trump has also threatened that if all the Israeli hostages are not released before he takes oath as the President of the United States, all hells will break loose. So it needs to be seen as to in which direction this entire process goes, because so far there has been no positive development between both the sides. But recently Hamas also released a list of 34 Israeli hostages that it might release. Yes, Tom, back to you in the studio.
Aditya, for a discussion on this topic, we are joined by Aaron Levarko, Israeli television and live from Israel, and we're also joined by Gautam Mukherjee in the studio. Aaron, I wanted to come to you first. I was wondering, how might the discovery of this body affect future attempts to secure the safety of the other hostages kept in Gaza?
Yeah, thank you. It definitely dampens the atmosphere here in Israel. The mood is once again sober. At the same time, there is a sector of our society that are enraged, not only by the fact that it wasn't just a body returned, it was a murdered body returned. He wasn't even Jewish. He was a Bedouin, a Muslim, a father of 19 children. Of course, in the Bedouin community, you're allowed, in the Muslim community, you're allowed up to 4 wives. So there's this man wasn't a soldier, or he wasn't out there fighting. He was a farmer. So the fact that a man like him, and by the way, his son is still believed to be in captivity. 2 of his children were released in November after October the 7th. So there was a lot of hope that he and his other son, this is a whole family, 4 people in one family that were kidnapped. And so there was hope that he and his other son would also be released. But sadly, his murdered dead body was returned. And this has put pressure on our government because a sector of our society are enraged not only at the murder, but they're enraged at the government. They're saying, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you acting faster? And this is what many people believe is Hamas's strategy. The strategy to put pressure on our government and bring disunity here in Israel.
Gautam Mukherjee, I wanted to come to you on this next one. Obviously, we had comments from Trump yesterday saying all hell will break loose if the hostages are not released before his inauguration. What is the importance of the ongoing mediation by the US?
Well, I think they want the hostage crisis to end because without that, it is very difficult to bring the war to a close. I think Trump, above all, wants to bring about a ceasefire and a rapprochement in terms of how to maintain the peace after, all of the dust settles down. Now, he is credited with the Abraham Accords, which was probably the most significant breakthrough in the Middle East, engineered and brokered by the US, and that was in his first term. Now, the process of Gaza rearming with Iranian help and coming back into a warlike situation is, not a solution. Today, they are largely smashed, and it may take a little bit of time, but they will come back because the financing of the Hamas and the Hezbollah and the Houthis and the various other Islamic bodies who are active in the region, in Syria as well, Islamic ISIS. All of these people, if they continue to be financed by Iran and equipped by Iran with any amount of weapons and missiles and so on, this is not going to end at all. It's going to die down for a while and then come back again. So the only true solution is sitting down with all sides, as well as Iran, and possibly doing something about the regime in Iran so that this war comes to an end once and for all, because it is the Ayatollah regime in Iran that is causing this constant conflict. And, you have heard reports that many people in Iran are quite dissatisfied. Iran is a highly populous country, and both men and women, ordinary people, are highly dissatisfied with the rule of the Ayatollahs, and the time may have come for America to intervene to bring about a worthwhile regime change. America often intervenes to bring about regime changes in strange ways in countries like Bangladesh, and I don't know how that has helped. either the American interests or the interests of the local area that involve India, Myanmar, China, Pakistan, etc. They've just turned this into a bit of a unstable area. But bringing about regime change in Iran could result in a more enduring peace, particularly with all the constituents of the Abrahamic Accords helping to bring it about.
Aaron, I wanted to come up to you on this next one. How could this development impact Prime Minister Netanyahu's pledge to bring home all the captives, dead or alive? Obviously, there are 95 captives still in Gaza. 34 are presumed deceased by Israel.
Well, I would imagine that he, along with the Mossad, probably with the CIA, they are working day and night to try all they can. This is a priority. At the same time, you know, as our friend, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Gautam?
Yes.
Thank you. As he said, you know, if we can sit down, if we can talk it through, if we can somehow come to a table and try to negotiate it in a friendly term, even if it's a cold friendly term. But what do we do in the meantime while we're being fired at? This is a problem. There is what's called a preemptive strike, and there's also what's called preemptive defense. We know, we're getting reports that the Iranians are planning another attack in areas like Judea and Samaria, where yesterday 3 Israelis were murdered. There are reports that there is an imminent big assault ready to break out there. So this is a very difficult, sensitive moment. There are many, many people who say, first we should focus on getting the captives back, then worry about the war and defense. But there are others who say, we cannot afford that with the kind of enemies that are in our neighborhood. They just want to wipe us, Israel, off the map. Even Muslims, even Bedouins. It's not just a Jewish thing here. So this is definitely putting pressure on our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and let's see what happens on January the 20th. When President Trump, you know, they say a new sheriff is coming to town. Let's see what happens then. And as our other friend who spoke first said, you know, he quoted Trump saying, all hell will break loose if the hostages aren't returned. So there's a lot at stake here. We got to see how it all works itself out.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both our guests for joining us for that discussion. We will now have a look at some more news updates. In Venezuela, opposition parties and NGOs are condemning the arrests of activists and opposition figures ahead of protests against President Nicolás Maduro's third-term inauguration. The opposition Popular Will Party claims at least 19 people have been detained, citing increased repression. On the eve of Thursday's protest, which aim to prevent Maduro's controversial swearing-in, opposition leaders, including Maria Corina Machado, have called for mass demonstrations. Machado, who it claims her candidate was the rightful winner of July's disputed election, insists that freedom must be fought for. Meanwhile, pro-government forces are already showing their strength in the streets of Caracas, with security forces, militias and pro-Maduro bikers preparing for the tense standoff. Aditya, we are joined by our reporter Aditya. What are the updates on this story?
Well, absolutely. You know, so far, you know, the opposition party, opposition leaders have been arrested, and you know, the opposition, because you know, this Nicolás Maduro will be sworn in as for his third term. You know, earlier, you know, Tom, let's just put this into perspective. You know, earlier when Donald Trump was first when he had assumed presidency before 2022, he was the president of America. You know, at that time also he had protested against this Maduro Venezuela, and there America has been opposing this particular person, this Venezuelan president Nicolás Maduro in the past too. So no, because there are reports that he behaves like an autocrat, and there are things that are not going down well under him. There was a time when the inflation in Venezuela had reached to an all-time high under this Nicolás Maduro's tenure. So this needs to be seen as to how this entire scenario is moved forward from here, since now the opposition parties are hell-bent opposing the third swearing in of Nicolás Maduro. It needs to be seen from here. Yes, Tom, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Aditya. We are joined for this discussion by Gautam Mukherjee and Joyita Basu, editor of the Sunday Guardian. Joyita, I wanted to come to you on this first one. Why are leaders like Gonzalez and Machado claiming they won this election?
Yeah, because you see, according to unofficial, of course, the government is saying that Maduro had won the election, but unofficial claims are being made that I think he had got something around 2.4 million votes, and the opposition got over 6 million, 3 times the vote. I mean, that is what the opposition is claiming, because there are widespread charges of rigging and unfair, illegal electoral practices, and that is the reason why there is reason to believe, that's why there's reason to believe that Maduro may not have won the elections. And even international bodies and countries and institutions, world institutions, they are saying that Maduro did not win this election. So that is the reason why the opposition is now up in arms against him. There is widespread protest, because if that is the correct figure, I mean the opposition won actually 3 times the vote of what Maduro won. So automatically that means at least 2/3 of the country is unhappy with Maduro. So if that is the case, if 2/3 of the country is unhappy, there is bound to be unrest, and this unrest has become now visible. So yes, that is the reason why. It is not just the opposition mobilizing, there are common people also who are mobilizing against the government. And what we are hearing about, there are serious reports of repression that are coming in, muzzling of the press, of course. And you see, the problem with Venezuela has always been, Hugo Chavez also, when he was there, what is known as hyperinflation. Okay, so that is something that people are finding very difficult to bear. So that is why there is so much turmoil in that country. It's a classic case of number one, a banana republic, basket case, economy gone down the drain, too many freebies and all, this is what has happened.
Gautam, I wanted to ask you, we've obviously seen, as Joyita said, we've seen international support for the opposition over there. I was wondering what could result in this. Could there be violence?
There could certainly be violence. There has been violence ever since the elections took place. And after that, it keeps cropping up from time to time, because Maduro refuses to accept the verdict and he refuses to vacate. He is the incumbent. In addition to that, America doesn't like him and wants him out. He uses that as a device to try and drum up support amongst the faithful, if not the opposition. How long he'll be able to hold on is anybody's guess, but he does have the power of the state on his side. He's got the weapons, he's got the army. So this is a situation in which he is able to repress the popular uprisings, he's able to repress the opposition and carry on. But it is an unstable situation, definitely.
Could we see any international intervention on this possibly at all?
Overt international intervention in a domestic, rigging affair, if you like, is unlikely. Covert is more than likely, probably operating already. including monies being paid to sustain the opposition. I would say the CIA must be very active. Will Maduro survive any length of time? That remains to be seen. But at the same time, Venezuela is oil rich. Maduro personally is very rich. So if he finds it very uncomfortable, he may well go into exile to bring this to a close, go into exile with a lot of money, pelf. And then it's okay to effect the regime change that the Americans would like to see.
Joyita, I was wondering, could increased international attention pressure Maduro's government to allow fair elections?
Well, there has to be some international, fair elections. When you're talking about the whole process is in the hands of Maduro. No, but how will the international? I mean, at the most, what they can do, they can impose sanctions. They already have a lot of sanctions. So, right now I do not see in any kind of intervention except for maybe threats of more measures, but then you see what happens when the international community takes such action is that it is the people who tend to suffer, because you see it is for them that the inflation goes up and all. So, right now I do not see what the international community can do except for expressing their support for the opposition, because power, the army, the police, the military, everything is in the hands of Maduro. So, what exactly can, unless there is a actual uprising, say for example, what happened in Bangladesh, okay, there was an uprising and Hasina had to flee. So, we have seen what has happened in Sri Lanka. So, unless these, it is called a color revolution, what happened in Ukraine. So, unless some kind of a color revolution takes place, I am certain the US in fact is trying for something like that, but it will all depend on, but a whole lot of lives will be lost of people, because Maduro is bound to use the army and the military against the people if they rise up in protest. So, until and unless the army has decided that it is going to switch sides and no longer support Maduro, I think this is going to continue, but yes, backroom deals, etc., underhand support. So, it has to be seen whether they can repeat another Bangladesh here.
Thank you very much for both of you for joining us. Let's move on to more news. Russia launched a bomb attack on the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia. There have been 13 fatalities reported so far in the attack, and the number of those injured has risen to over 100. Let's find out more on this report.
A Russian guided bomb attacked the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia. At least 13 civilians lost their lives and more than 100 others have been reported injured.
Коли я сюди прийшов, то лежала жінка, вже нога в неї була там розбита. Напевне, що в неї вже вкололи якесь обезболююче, бо вона просто лежала, не кричала нічого. Сидів мужик на остановці, теж там.
Ukraine's Prosecutor General's office informed that high-rise residential blocks, an industrial facility and other infrastructure were damaged in the attack. The attack came minutes after Regional Governor Ivan Fedorov warned that high-speed missiles and glide bombs were heading toward the Zaporizhia region. Bodies of the victims and people injured in the attack were strewn across a road and adjacent paved areas next to damaged public transportation facilities. Emergency workers continued their rescue operations amid raging flames, smoke and burned cars in the background. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his condolences for the deceased and said,
Це був удар просто по місту, по звичайним людям, абсолютно свідомий удар російської армії. Це знов демонструє, що насправді потрібно Росії. Вони хочуть тільки війни і тільки жертв. Саме тому жодного дня не можна втрачати, треба тиснути на Москву, треба примушувати Росію до миру. Треба робити і надалі все необхідне.
He added that he will be attending a meeting in the Ramstein format, with additional negotiations planned with partners at the level of defense ministers and military commanders. A day before, the Ukrainian military said it struck a fuel storage depot deep inside Russia in the Saratov region. The attack caused a huge fire at the facility, which supplies an important Russian airbase. Meanwhile, arrangements for peace talks continue. Outgoing U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken said any future deal to end the war in Ukraine would need to build into its deterrence to prevent Russia from once again attacking Ukraine. Bureau Report, NewsX.
And that is all we have time for. We will be back with more international news updates. Thank you.